How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 1.
My fellow Americans, welcome. It's Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you'd like to be on the program, as always, if you text ENGAGE to 33777. I want to invite you to grab a ticket now for the gathering while we still have some left. We've invited Ron DeSantis, Glenn Youngkin, Brian Kemp, Doug Ducey of Arizona. We've invited now officially the Speaker of the House of Representatives, Mike Johnson, to be with us, Vice President Mike Pence, the Chairman of the Republican National Committee. It should be a fantastic event with a great lineup of speakers on stage. They take your questions. And it's a great time to actually mix and mingle in person. If you text the word ENGAGE to 33777, you can secure your ticket for this year's gathering. We got to begin with some wild news. I read it, and I'm doing a This is only reported in the Times of Israel, but it's been picked up by a number of reporters left, right, and center. My suspicion is that someone floated a plan to see the reaction to it. That's my suspicion because it just seems so wild that this would be the case. I'm flummoxed that this is where they would go, but the reporter, Jacob Magid, is actually pretty well sourced. He's respected, and so I trot this out as the lead because it is the biggest story. It's a bigger story than the inflation news, which we will get to. Biden officials envision a substantially weakened Hamas remaining in Gaza, but want to marginalize it further with an Arab-backed Palestinian Authority that can outgovern the terrorist group. More than 7 months into the Israel-Hamas war, the Biden administration's top priority is to try to secure a hostage deal. This would commence a weeks-long truce, but Washington's goal is for the pause to be turned permanent. If we can get a ceasefire, we can get something more enduring, and then maybe in the conflict, says White House National Security Council spokesman John Kirby. What appears less clear, though, is how pushing for the ceasefire squares with another U.S. commitment, eliminating the threat of Hamas. An enduring defeat of Hamas certainly remains the Israeli goal, and we share that goal with it. The Biden administration has not directly and publicly addressed this apparent dissonance, but two U.S. officials and two other sources familiar with the matter who spoke to the Times of Israel on conditions of anonymity offered some clarity. The goal is for Hamas to be severely weakened when the dust settles, that is, incapable of carrying out another attack like it launched on October 7th, the first U.S. official said. But we have to be honest about the fact Hamas will remain in Gaza in some form after the war is over. The last 6 months has proven no amount of fighting is going to change that, they added. Last week, Israeli troops raided Gaza City's Zaytun neighborhood for the third time since the war's outbreak, after Hamas fighters returned to the area previously cleared by the IDF. What we're trying to do is advance a vision where Hamas would be marginalized, while Israel would be stronger through improved relations with its Arab neighbors. By doing that, we are able to eliminate the threat of Hamas without having to continue the war indefinitely. It's a years-long process and will require Israeli buy-in, but the alternative is a never-ending cycle of violence that the Israelis could be left alone to deal with. You know, they're doing it for the good of Israel. This is Jake Sullivan on the hostage situation.
I cannot give you a clear number of how many are still alive because we do not have total fidelity on that, unfortunately. And it's something that we watch every single day. We know there are deceased hostages, and we know there are living hostages. And we know that with each passing day, the risk to those hostages also goes up, which only redoubles our commitment to try to get to a ceasefire and hostage deal as rapidly as possible. But unfortunately, I'm not in a position to give you fidelity on those numbers because nobody entirely has it. We have our analysis, our assessments. Some of that is driven by intelligence, so I have to be cautious in sharing them. But to look you in the eye and say, we know exactly how many are alive, nobody can do that for you.
Real reassuring from this administration. Now, they want to essentially bring back in the Palestinian Authority, the PA they call it, and take over Gaza. I need to put this in perspective for you. Hamas was elected in the early 2000s in a democratic election by the people of Gaza. The Hamas and Fatah were the two parties. Hamas got elected. Fatah went away. Fatah went away because Hamas murdered them all. They didn't just close up shop and say we lost. No. They were the political rivals of Hamas. And when Hamas got power, they murdered all the opposition. I have a question for you. Do you really think that Hamas will go quietly? A weakened Hamas is still a Hamas with fangs. As long as Hamas is alive, Hamas will do damage. Hamas now has ties to Iran and will be funded by Iran. So you can't get Hamas to go away without making Iran go away, and this administration wants to prop up of Iran. So here's what I think is actually happening here. We have some naive progressives who believe they can remake the world in their image, who believe in the inherent goodness of everyone other than the Jews. And they think that they can bring about peace in our time in some capacity, very Neville Chamberlain-like. It's willful naivete. The Israelis want to eliminate Hamas as a threat, and they realize the only way to eliminate Hamas as a threat is to wipe Hamas off the face of the planet. And if that means a prolonged war, well, then buckle up, sit back, and have a long war. There's a fundamental disconnect in this country from Israel. Now, just keep in mind, again, the perspective here is that this administration has now told Israel, if you don't go into Rafah, and by the way, Israel is going into Rafah, and what this administration has said, what the Biden administration has said, is if you don't go into Rafah, we will give you intelligence we have thus far not given you about where to find Hamas leadership. Much as I mentioned yesterday, this would be akin to an American ally telling us, if you don't go into Afghanistan, we will tell you where Osama bin Laden is. How do you think that would have played? It's playing the same way in Israel with this, that the American administration is betraying the alliance with Israel, which they are doing, by the way, all because they hate Benjamin Netanyahu. You got to understand here that, Naphtali, the opposition leader in Israel, he is on Benjamin Netanyahu. So they don't like each other. They don't like each other, Naphtali and Netanyahu. They don't like each other. They are political rivals. And Naphtali has Netanyahu's back on this. He is in agreement that the United States should not be withholding weapons and the United States should not be withholding intelligence. And in fact, what the United States is doing by withholding weapons and intelligence is getting more people needlessly killed. We now know, actually, that the way Israel has invaded Gaza has minimized civilian casualties in ways they have not been given credit. Only now is the United Nations acknowledging it. So much has been premised on lies. So much has been premised on lies. All of the talk of genocide, there's been no genocide. The people on social media who scream about the genocide, they're ignorant. They are ignorant, stupid, unserious people on the side of terrorists. They don't have the facts. They claim the facts. They claim moral certitude. And unfortunately, these are the people inside the Biden administration. Remember how many staffers anonymously signed a letter condemning Joe Biden's pro-Israel actions? How many staffers in Congress anonymously signed letters saying we need to rethink our strategic support of Israel? How many staffers? None of them wanted to put their name on it. They were all cowards. but they did it. And they wanted some sort of political national security realignment, and the Biden administration seems like they want to give them that. The Biden administration seems to be run by the progressives who would actually make the situation worse. You can't let Hamas stay in power. You can't honestly say that you're going to wipe out Hamas while still leaving them in place. It's like roaches. You either eliminate them or they will come back. This back from the Times of Israel. The Palestinian Authority is arguably in its weakest position since its founding 30 years ago, when it was envisioned as a precursor to a more sovereign entity. In the eyes of Palestinians, the PA's legitimacy has waned amid charges of corruption and mismanagement that have piled up as Israel entrenched its presence in the West Bank. The U.S., along with its Arab and European partners, are not deterred, though, and are working to establish mechanisms for a reformed Palestinian Authority to return to the Strip. Now, I want to segue into domestic politics here because there's a point that has to be made. The Biden administration, the Democrats, the political left, they've lost touch with the American public. They, remember, it goes back to Barack Obama and the guns and religion. And now Nancy Pelosi in a Oxford Union debate, blasting the flyover country's views on gods and gays and guns. The Democrats have lost their connection to the middle class, to the working class, to flyover country, as it's derisively called. How do they think? In what universe where they have lost touch with your average American, do they think they understand the Palestinians? Is it not bizarre? You've got Democrats in Washington and the State Department, the Defense Department, and the White House arrogantly presume that even though they've lost touch with the views of the American people, by God, we know what the Palestinians want. What the Palestinians want is death to the Jews. All you got to do is ask them. I mean, that's it. Have you not gone out and interviewed? I mean, pollsters have interviewed the Palestinians, and like 75, 80% of them say they were glad October 7th happened, and they only regret that more Jews weren't killed. And you want to put these people in some sort of leadership position? This administration has badly miscalculated. They want to do a peace deal between Saudi Arabia and Israel, which was on the verge of happening when Trump was president, and Joe Biden at the time mocked it, saying it would never happen. Now they want to do it. But the Saudis, because of internal politics, want a two-state solution that Israel right now is not Israel does not want to offer. Netanyahu apparently, allegedly, is willing to come around to some accommodation, provided other Arab partners help the situation. But the Biden administration is the least helpful party. And that is coming up time and time again between the Arab nations and Israel, and even some of the Europeans noting the Biden administration is bungling this. The Biden administration has expectations set by the progressives in power within the Biden administration that are not realistic to anyone other than the aloof progressives in the Biden administration. They're wrecking Israel's peace in the same way they've wrecked our economy. They have progressive theories on how the world will work that defy reality, and reality is biting everybody in the butt right now. The idea that Joe Biden and his administration somehow think leaving Hamas in any position other than annihilating them is possible and there will be peace in our times is delusional. It's not just Joe Biden who has dementia. It's his entire administration. They're all delusional, suffering some sort of brain rot, thinking this is possible. There will not be peace in our times, Joe Biden. You must eliminate the terrorist threat. And by the way, they still have American hostages, and you're more interested in punishing Israel than getting our hostages back. Is it any wonder you're losing in the polls? Welcome back. It's Eric Erickson. The phone number, 877-973-7425. If you want to be on the program, if you text ERIC, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the show notes, the live stream, the podcast, all that great stuff. You know how the media, the left, they want you to know crime is down, believes the statistics, all these sorts of things. Crime is in some cases down. And we know that from local police departments. But people who cite the FBI statistics to show that crime is down, particularly on the left, want you to believe the statistics and not your eyes. And what's happened is the FBI has changed the way it reports and the way it obtains data from local police departments. And a lot of local police departments have stopped complying because they use the old system. They don't have the means to change to the new system. They're not going to bother with it. And so it looks like crime is down when you know for yourself it's not down, and in some cases is still bad. A Washington, D.C. judge has sparked backlash after releasing a teenager accused of spraying a neighborhood with bullets from an AR-15. Lloyd Nolan Jr., the judge, is a self-described woke magistrate judge on the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, ruled that Amonte Moody, 18, be released on bail. The 18-year-old allegedly peppered a street with 26 rounds while targeting a car of 4 people at 2:30 a.m. on April 22nd. Ring doorbell footage captured a suspect shooting wildly from the hip with the assault rifle. Assault rifle, that's the media. Nobody was injured or killed, thank God. After his decision sparked eyebrows, Fox News reported his online presence included a post where he said he was still woke and another where he donated to a fundraiser supporting a George Soros-backed professor. I want to be real clear here with you. You get the government you voted for. You get the government you voted for. And people in Washington, D.C. are getting this sort of magistrate because the people in Washington, D.C. have decided they want this sort of lawlessness. They keep electing these people, and they're getting what they wanted. And we may hate it, we may look at it and we may be appalled by the violence, and we may be appalled by the laxity of prosecution, but this is what the people in Washington, D.C. wanted, and give them a taste of their medicine and see if maybe it changes their mind. Now, we've had a taste of, well, the medicine on this economy right now, and nobody's real happy with it. Inflation data has come in. It's still higher than expected. Americans for Prosperity is doing a bus tour around the country to remind people that we actually know how to fix things. We don't need new thinking. We have very old, tested, tried and true ideas that this administration has abandoned and that others seem to reject. And we can employ those old, tried and true ideas to revitalize the economy because prosperity is possible. In fact, if you go to prosperityispossible.com, you can find where Americans for Prosperity is running their bus tour around the nation. They've actually got a bus tour, old-fashioned bus tour. They're coming to a city near you with speakers who can remind you we know the tried and the true. We know what works, and we can, deploy those ideas. Americans for Prosperity wants to remind you prosperity is possible with this bus tour, prosperityispossible.com. That is prosperityispossible.com. Greetings. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. The phone number is 877-973-7425. Should you wish to be on the program, I am delighted to have you with me. We got to talk about the wokes. I want to take phone calls here, but I want to talk about the wokes first because there's these protests, so 30 students walked out of Jerry Seinfeld's Duke speech. It was a good speech. I listened to it. 30 students out of 6,000 or so attendees at Duke's graduation walked out. And the media made it a national story. They gave disproportionate attention. Politico, about 30 students, not 30, but about 30. At least Politico, by the time they write it, compared to many other outlets, says a tiny contingent. It was 7,000 students. 30 of the 7,000 students leaving their seats chanting Free Palestine Amid boos and cheers, some waved red, green, black, and white Palestinian flags. Seinfeld, whose decades-long namesake show became one of the most popular in television, was there to receive an honorary doctorate from the university. Quote, after spending 4 years at what is considered one of the finest institutions of higher education in the world, they apparently feel that perhaps some light entertainment will give you all get you all to the final realization, I think I've really had enough of this place. It was a funny speech. I listened. But there is this protest movement again, and there's lots of rage. And I want to see if I can explain some of this to you, because this is happening now around a lot of college graduations. I feel bad for the kids at the University of Southern California. They did not have a high school graduation because of COVID. This is the same class. They went into college after COVID. They didn't have graduations there. A lot of them, some of them, that they couldn't have beginning commencements at college and introductory groups at college. They started remote. Now they're graduating and everything's canceled. It sucks for them. And we're seeing this pattern around the country, activists shutting things down in the country. Whether it's the riots post-George Floyd or whether it's this, we're seeing the Boko Haram. I mean, the only difference these days between Boko Haram and Boko Haram is Boko Haram will kill you if you don't convert. Boko Haram just destroys your life. You still live, you just can't make money. And they protest, they agitate, they firebomb, they burn things down. So what is going on? All right. This is where I go a little off the deep end for some of you, and I'll try not to stay there long and come back. But every person, with very few exceptions, every person asks themselves, why am I here? What purpose do I have? It's a natural human idea. Now, there are some like diehard atheists out there, and they tend to be the exception. They just think, we're here, we maybe procreate, we die. They are the let me just tell you, the real charmers, and the joy and life of all parties is the real atheist of we're a random act of cellular combinations, a verve in the universe, and then we die. Yahoo. Those aren't the charming people. Most people have some level of spirituality. You may not be theological, you may not be religious, but you have some. Is there a God? Maybe there's something. Look at the order of the universe. Look in the telescope. Be in wonder out there. There might be something there. So what is my purpose? I am to the universe what the grain of sand is to the beach. If anything, the grain of sand is to the beach larger than I am to the universe. So what is all of this? And we used to have in this country more organized religion where people would, regardless of your faith, would give you some level of purpose and put meaning in proper perspective, that you are in the ordered universe a created being with some divine purpose headed towards some infinite possibility, some reality beyond this realm of what we call reality, some eternity. You had some eternal home. And it didn't matter whether you were Buddhist or Hindu or Shinto or Jewish or Christian or Zoroastrian or you name it. There was some future inevitable eternity to which you are headed, and you have purpose in your life because you are divinely created in some capacity, regardless of your religion. And as religion faded and we just moved towards spirituality, you are created for some purpose. Well, now, when you don't have religion, so you don't really have a God in the equation, where do you get your purpose from? Where do you get your purpose? Do you derive your purpose from yourself? You may think you do, but very often, in the absence of some anchoring divinity, you derive your purpose from the mob. Because the mob is the collective consciousness of the people. Individuals are smart and caring and empathetic, and the mob runs amok like lemmings off the cliff. So we now have a society in the United States where largely we have rejected the divine. I get told all the time. There are a lot of people who complain when you go down this road on religion and theology. That's not my point here, though. It is many people have rejected, including people who listen to talk radio, conservatives, Christians, you name it, people who just show up on their bass boat on Sunday and claim they're connecting with God. They've kind of lost their inclination to relate to a divinity that is not themselves. They worship themselves. And in the process, younger people grow up and they want purpose in life because everybody has the voice in the back of their head. Who am I? Why am I here? And if you don't have a divinity to answer that, you answer it yourself, and you answer that yourself largely through peer pressure, which becomes the mob. So you have a bunch of college kids out there who don't have a divine spark in them. Their parents and the institutions of learning that they've gone to have worked very hard to snuff it out. And they're trying to find themselves, and they're not called to a higher power now. They're called to a higher purpose, and the higher purpose is always what the mob wants. And the Marxist educators, they've harnessed this. They've eradicated God. They've allowed people to take offense. They made it very easy for you to complain and take offense when anyone discusses that subject. And they've predicated everything on power. Now, this has invaded the right as well, and this is very important for you to understand, that the right now, just like the left, in many cases is predicated on Marxist power presuppositions. So you have people on the right who yell things like, don't you know what time it is? In fact, I saw one of the funniest things the other day. It was absolutely one of the funniest things. I gotta give you, I gotta read for you. It actually is a passage of scripture. It actually is very funny. So it was a pastor responding to an activist who essentially did something bullying someone on the other side. And the pastor responds, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. And the response from a political activist from the right, not the left, from the right was, don't you know what time it is? This is the favorite saying of the bullying brain biblical donkeys. Don't you know what time it is? If it's not time for love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control, well, God help us. We're outside of the time where you can get any sort of good, useful advice. People want to behave just like the other side because the Marxist presupposition of power is now woven into a lot of the new right, and it's always been there on the left. And part of the whole power dynamic is this worldview of oppressed and oppressor, and everybody brings themselves to view themselves as a victim. So my friend Sam Feist, he's the Washington bureau chief of CNN. I swear on the Holy Bible, I don't know what Sam's political views are. He is probably the only person at CNN I could ever say that about, having worked there. Sam defended the network. He was an institutionalist. He pushed for conservatives to be on. I will tell you, as someone who was attacked by Media Matters, as someone who was attacked by the Democratic Party, as someone who was attacked in a White House press conference by the press secretary of the Democratic president of the United States while I was on CNN, he's the guy who had my back. He wanted conservative voices on. He wanted people from outside the Beltway. He's leaving CNN after 30 some odd years there. He's going to be the president of C-SPAN. And the usual suspects of the new right are out. I can't believe they do this, but someone from CNN, they're co-opting. It's a power dynamic. It's not about the truth. It's about the power dynamic. You've decided, because the other side views the world as oppressor and oppressed, you're going to view yourself as oppressed and react. Why can't you see that I'm oppressed? I'm the victim here. Everybody, you've made a choice to be a victim. You haven't been raped. You haven't been murdered. You haven't been robbed. You haven't been burglarized. You haven't been terrorized, but yet you've decided to be the victim. It's this Marxist presupposition that answers the question of who am I? Why am I here? And your goal now and your role now is to be a victim and to victimize others for you being a victim. And the right does this and the left does this. And this plays out across the planet in politics now with Boko Haram and the wokes out there terrorizing Jews on college campuses. It is because they've decided to replace the idea of the divine and the divine spark, and they've made it about themselves. And when you become that self-involved and that self-interested, you have no answer for why am I here and what is my purpose except what the mob tells you. And the mob always moves towards victimization. This is a fallout of postmodern society in this country. And it's playing out on college campuses around this country as students who have no political inclinations whatsoever put on the cafe and go out and they march in the name of the Palestinians and they do Hamas propaganda, all because they're trying to answer the question, why am I here? What purpose do I have? And what answer did they get from their colleges and universities? Silence, other than do the work of the mob. Until we change that and give people an answer which is something more edifying than the work of the mob, and you're not a victim, you've chosen that life for yourself, we're going to keep having more and more of this at a time we need more serious people, because look what is happening in Washington. We need serious people, and we're not getting serious answers. We're getting self-interested, self-absorbed, self-righteousness from the political left, and it is now pervasive on the political right as well. So both sides have decided it's all about the acquisition and keeping of power, which is actually antithetical to this country where our founders built a system that divides power and spreads it out to neutralize it. And both sides have decided, they don't really like that system. And if you listen to voices on the right and the left today, they will tell you that the system is too broken to ever be recovered. We are post-constitutional. That's the phrase a lot of people on the right use. And it's not that we actually are. It's that they want us to be, because they want to hold power so the other side can never get it, because both sides are tired of the other side ever winning elections. And boy, if Donald Trump wins, the left is convinced he'll never let go of power. He will, but the left will burn the country down in the process because they don't want to give up power. That's what we're dealing with here. Boko Haram. It's now on the left as much as it is on the right, and they want to burn everything down just to hold power and never provide people an answer to the question of why are we actually here. All right, I got to move on to other stuff. I just needed to get that off my chest, particularly after these last 48 hours of seeing all these protests on college campuses from a bunch of kids who are going to go off and be human resource directors for subpar companies and professional victims with women and gender studies degrees. They have wasted their mother and father's fortunes, and mommy and daddy are probably proud of them in the process where they shouldn't be. Now, I'm proud of my bank, Old Glory Bank. You would be too if you use Old Glory Bank, because they are a great bank. They're highly innovative. Their app, I've got their app on, I got my iPhone right here. I can go to it. And if I go to my Old Glory Bank app on my phone, one, it's extremely nicely designed. And two, oh, look at that. I can even use FaceTime to get into it, because that's how cutting edge they are. And then I can, for example, if I've lost my debit card, which I haven't, I can pause it. And in pausing it, when I find it, I can turn it back on. So I don't have to cancel it if I lose it. If I think I might know where it is, it's got great online bill pay apps. It's got great services. Y'all, it's a phenomenal, phenomenal app, and it's a phenomenal, phenomenal bank. I can even deposit cash using the Old Glory app with a QR code. I can go to 88,000 retail locations around the country. I can deposit cash into my bank account. You can too, because it's Old Glory Bank. They're that innovative. They're by conservatives for conservatives, and they're never going to cancel your account because of who you are and who you do business with. OldGloryBank.com. You can get an account in 8 minutes or less. It did not take me that long. OldGloryBank.com. Member FDIC, equal housing lender. Terms and conditions apply. Greetings. This hour of the program brought to you by First Liberty Building and Loan. Wherever you are nationwide, First Liberty can help your business grow. If you're buying a building, First Liberty can help you. Reach out to them, FirstLibertyGA.com. FirstLibertyGA.com. I want to go to Jacob. You're going to be up next. Thanks for being patient. How are you?
Yeah, how are you?
Great. What's going on?
Yeah, so I'm actually a Jewish college student at the University of Georgia, and I just kind of want to talk about some experience that I see with the rising anti-Semitism.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, no, so it actually is as bad as what you see in the news. As a Jewish student, like I'm in the Hillel there, I'm in Chabad there, and we get attacked and intimidated like nearly every week. There had a pro-Palestinian protest on we don't need World War II history, Kristallnacht, which is like which is the day that Nazis basically rounded up a bunch of Jews, and it was one of those violent days of Jewish history. They had a protest on that day. We had a counter protest as a memorial for someone who was killed on October 7th, and we had to leave because we got actually attacked, and the cops had to come separate us. It really is as bad as you see on the news as like a Jewish student actually on campus. It's actually quite terrifying. Like nearly every day we get dirty looks. I
want to reemphasize for people, this is the University of Georgia, where it hasn't been filled with like the shutting down college campus, putting graduation at risk sort of anti-Semitism, and yet you're still experiencing it.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I want to thank the university. I actually work with them on combating anti-Semitism. They've been pretty good with it, but no, it's just, I mean, we had people get called slurs in the middle of downtown Athens. We've had, like I said, we've been attacked physically. I taught a class. I'm a political science major at the University of Georgia. I actually taught a class on political ideology within Judaism, and the question that I had from a student was, how is saying death to Israel anti-Semitic or end Israel?
Wow.
Getting rid of 50% of all Jewish people in the world is anti-Semitic. So, I mean, if there's one thing, I want to thank you for continuing to talk about the hostages. It's something that we don't see more and more. I'm not Israeli. I'm from Georgia, but I have many friends who are Israeli, and they know people who are affected, and it is a real issue. But the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism is on the ballot, well, not on the ballot, but it's in the Senate right now.
Right.
So if anyone could write to their representative, maybe make some changes to actually get Title VI to actually help Jewish students. Yeah, we appreciate it.
Well, listen, Jacob, thank you for calling in and keep your head up out there. Best of luck to you. Y'all, this is happening, like I say, higher from the SEC, and you should, because it's not nearly as crazy as others out there. But here's a student at the University of Georgia. We're experiencing it. I have heard similar stories from around the country. What is going on right now, and it is the canary in the coal mine that something is deeply disturbing in our society right now. There's a lot of disturbed individuals out there. If you're willing to lash out at Jewish students because they're Jewish, something's really wrong in our society right now, and we got to work on it.